Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Incentive Compensation in Retail, 5 Bottom Line Benefits. I'm Erin Harris, Executive Editor at Integrated Solutions for Retailers, and I'll be moderating today's event. During today's webinar, we'll discuss how some of the current challenges facing retailers can be positively affected by incentive compensation. In addition to myself, today's presentations will be delivered by 2 leading industry experts. Fred Sass, Worldwide Marketing Executive for the Sales Performance Management Division at IBM, and Laura Roach, Senior VP Marketing and Customer Success, OpenSymmetry. Welcome, Laura and Fred. If at any time during this event you are experiencing technical problems, please take a moment to refresh your browser and see if that resolves the issue. If your problem persists, please submit a question via the Q&A system, and we will help diagnose and resolve your problem. All right, let's get started. I'd like to kick off today's event by explaining some of the challenges in the retail industry and how they map to the 5 bottom line benefits of incentive compensation. Now, specifically, I'm going to cover how to enhance customer experience, improve sales performance, some changing market conditions, motivating the sales team and trying to reduce turnover, and drive operational efficiencies. All right, let's start with the customer experience. Do you want to provide a better customer experience? Then you simply just need to treat your employees better. But how do retailers actually do that? Create a great employee experience so employees create a great customer experience. So ask yourself, do workers have to jump through hoops to get a day off? Is HR doing all it can to support them? Are their paychecks coming on time? Are they properly incentivized to do better and be better employees? Companies with exemplary customer service understand that delivering a superior experience for consumers drives loyalty and improves top and bottom line results. And customer experience standouts tend to have extensive employee training and incentive management programs. And I think it's safe to assume that all retailers are concerned with and understand the importance of the customer experience, that need to surprise and delight your consumers and your customers with each and every visit or click. And while a pleasant customer experience depends on many things, right? You have to have the right product in the right place at the right time, for example. A pleasant customer experience that maintains and drives loyalty is critically dependent on an informed workforce who feels they are treated fairly and compensated accordingly for their performance. An employee who feels appreciated will deliver a better customer experience, which will move the sales needle. The alternative is missed opportunity sales and just bad news for the brand. Now, for example, according to New Voice Media, following a negative customer experience, 58% of Americans would never use that company again. And we all know that by now that, people tell their friends and family, so the word spreads quickly. 59% of 25 to 34-year-olds, that millennial region, share poor customer experiences online. But there's good news. After a positive customer experience, 69% of Americans recommend that company to other people. So how do you bolster performance to obtain the desired outcome of a good customer experience? A recent study conducted by Experticity, a consulting firm, and University of Pennsylvania professor Marshall Fisher found that sales by knowledgeable, engaged store associates brought in 69% more money on average than sales by those who weren't. So really, no one wants to do hard work so that someone else is rewarded. And it's no secret that retail has evolved dramatically over the past few years, and the following are part of the reason for that change. Interconnectivity is a way of life. It impacts the way people get and share information, communicate, transact business, the way they socialize, and the way they shop your brand. Globalization, as retailers understand how to globalize their business, it's a requirement to support large-scale growth and sound business economics. Technology is pervasive. It is driven by falling costs, widespread access and adoption, a working infrastructure, and increased standardization. And omnichannel. Now, it's my belief that some retailers probably hate the word omnichannel. To them, it's all retailing. Nonetheless, consumers expect to shop your brand seamlessly, regardless of channel. Now, according to the National Retail Federation, retail is the largest private sector employer in the United States with total employment of more than 15 million people. But within those 15 million people, retail is riddled with turnover. A Center for American Progress, or CAP, study found it costs, on average, $3,328 to find, hire, and train a replacement for a $10 hour retail employee. Pay Group reported a median turnover rate of 67% for part-time retail employees. So all that is to say, the compensation is key to motivating the sales team and reducing turnover. Now, when we talk about operational efficiencies, we need to discuss automation versus manual processes. Manual processes reduce error rates 3 to 8%. So the importance of automating your system and processes to drive operational efficiencies is imperative. And technology does that. It drives operational efficiencies. Now, according to Paula Rosenblum, she's the managing partner at Retail Systems Research, and she's also an Integrated Solutions for Retailers editorial board member, explains the following. She talks about the vision for today's retailer, and she describes it as such. Technology plays a strategic role in enabling future retail enterprise and business models, that information assets are at least as important as physical assets, that the CIO is a strategic partner, not mere requirements gatherer, and that IT shifts from cost center to revenue enabler. She notes that this is the only way for retailers to win as consumers and the information age transform the retail business model. However, she importantly notes it will only work if processes, compensation strategies, and the labor force shifts to support it. So as you can see, the customer experience, performance, changing market conditions, motivating the sales team and reducing turnover, and operational efficiencies are key challenges facing retailers. Now at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who's now going to talk to you about some real-world case study scenarios that speak to these topics and how incentive comp can help combat each and every one of these challenges. Laura?
Thank you so much for your insights, Erin. I really appreciate the time, and thank you for everybody who joined. So you can see just from some of those insights Erin's been able to share how important it is for retailers to be taking a deeper look at optimizing their operations. The proof is in the data that there's a significant gap and opportunity to drive performance for retailers of all shapes and sizes. And the companies that are taking action are differentiating themselves from their competitors. And we see those as these 5 key bottom line benefits that we look to dive deeper in and share with you around improving sales performance, that agility to react to the market changes. How do you enhance that customer experience if that's really the core of the consumer's interests? Motivate and engage your employees, all in an integrated way so that you're operating effectively and efficiently. So OpenSymmetry and IBM would like to share with you the approaches to realize these benefits and how technology has actually enabled organizations to achieve and realize real benefits. I go back to really that first statement, and really everything that Erin was kind of talking about is where do you start? And Erin and the other analysts have shared the proof that something must be done. And we think you have to embrace the customer. You always have to start with the customer. So what does it take to ignite that customer experience? And I've heard from a recent conference, there's a strong mix of technology and human touch, right? So if you look at some of the other top retailers out there in e-commerce and that mix there with executives from Macy's, Nike, Blue Nile, Whole Foods, Intel, Westfield, and Home Depot, they all share the same perspective, and they did this recently at the 10th Annual Global Retailing Conference this spring. But most recently, I had the chance to actually dive deeper into this conversation and hear from Macy's CEO, Terry Lundgren, who's the chairman and CEO of Macy's, talk about their successes. And I love this quote on what keeps him up at night. And it's not the internet. It's not the malls, quote unquote, are dying. They have fully embraced the omni-channel, and it's always aligning. The core bottom line here is always aligning to embrace the customer. And so they fully understand that their buyers may want to look online, go into stores, go back online and buy, and heck, then even return back to the store in a variety of ways and interacting. And they have massive amounts of data they can leverage, right, and take action on and learn about their customers so they can align their hiring, their compensation plans, and their strategy around the customer. But do you know what the number one common theme amongst all his store and sales associates were? And I thought this was really powerful. And what makes those sales reps that are on the floor working within the customers the most successful? What was the number one thing that every sales rep said? They said, "I'm friends with my customer." That's pretty powerful, and it kind of really hits home. Customer experience is so important for both the customer and the sales rep. Think back to Aaron's earlier comments on knowledgeably engaged store associates. Those brought in 69% more money on average. That's real cash, real money. So you kind of step back a little bit and say, well, why can't we get this done? How do we align with those growth opportunities? And we find that across all businesses, not just retail, but given the massive amounts of data and other market dynamics, retailers have the most to gain from optimizing this effort end to end. So if you look at this, I like this diagram from Forrester Research. It kind of shows the alignment. But not only on the upper right are your customers changing in their buying behaviors, but your markets are changing. So no wonder, finance, sales, and HR are at odds on what the right mix is here, right? So take the right side of the market forces and the customer. This drives the type of business priorities. On the bottom right here are kind of those customer-centric priorities. How do you improve the customer experience? How do you fund those new product innovations that are going to meet the customer and consumer's demand, ultimately speeding up that order-to-cash cycle and simplifying those pricing and contract terms, all in a motivating sales comp plan that's going to drive your team and your organization. Meanwhile, on the other side, the stakeholders, the next level of pressures with regards to shareholders, market, business strategies, finance, investors, no wonder everybody is at odds in this kind of tug of war. So understanding how to balance and align these various groups is key. And when there's misalignment, you'll see, think about your underperformers maybe, your missed goals, people, employee turnover and low engagement. All of those map to lost cost and lost opportunity. So now if you take it to the other side and take this upstream, and I can't help myself because anybody who knows me knows I probably fund most of Starbucks, but you take this upstream and look back down on how to track and motivate and reward employees. My experience is take the Starbucks experience they just rolled out with that order to pay and pick up. Who would have ever thought I needed to actually order my coffee and pick it up before I got there? But it's just another way to service the customer, and on the other end, another way to capture and track what that customer behavior is as well as his revenue transactions. So, do you give credit to the store that they picked the drink up at? Most likely yes, given that it's the loyalty and patronage to that store that made them order and pick up there in the first place and choose that location, coupled with the confidence that the services from that store was going to deliver as expected, which enabled my customer connection and loyalty to purchase, right? It's real money. The convergence of customer and technology is really changing that paradigm of how retailers motivate and reward their employees. You have commerce happening before, during, and after, both digitally and in brick and mortar. You have to decide, you have to get credit and track this and gain that knowledge. Improving that customer experience just by 10% can yield more than $1 billion in additional revenue. That's pretty significant considering 86% of buyers are willing to pay for a better experience. Think of your brands and think of your target markets and stuff like that and how that impacts you. Now you take those millennials that Aaron was joking about, and I can personally experience that has really shifted things. But as Aaron referenced earlier in this group, this is a vocal group. They'll share both good and bad experiences to anyone that will listen, and many traditional apparel retailers actually we've seen are struggling to adjust to these new customer behaviors, right? So take department stores. Many say that consumers are spending dollars elsewhere, right? And then you have on one extreme maybe the high-end brands like Michael Kors. I was just reading where inventories are kind of rising, but they're battling that maybe that has something to do around their brand's not cool enough anymore or something along those lines. Well, what about the teen retailers, right? And as a mom of a 15 and 13-year-old, I'm intimately aware of how I'm being targeted to help support their buying behaviors. But teen retailers like Abercrombie and Fitch, Aeropostale, American Eagle are all shifting. They're downsizing and changing their strategies. But then you also have on the other side maybe some of these apparel stores, if you've just read recently this summer around Wet Seal, have shut down locations. There's things happening. It's shifting. How do you connect that customer experience to compensation and your business objectives? So, if you even break it down further and think back to the department stores and catalogs, retailers controlled everything, right? We loved it. We set the time, the place, the parameters for consumers to shop, and consumers were just excited to have stuff and accepted what they got. They were at the whim of manufacturers and retailers, restricted by that physical store hours and offerings. Well, that was just wonderful, right? How nice was that for sales comp operators and comp plan designers and technologists to just have it all in their control and they could manage it all. Now there's 24/7 shopping at any store in the world from any device anyone might choose. The internet and a plethora of new technologies that now all allow consumers to cross physical and digital platforms whenever, however they want. It's given consumers that total accessibility, right? And it's really the age of the customer. They've changed their mindset to I need stuff to I want an experience. So this mindset ties to a larger shift in consumer values. To achieve happiness and well-being, consumers now look for experiences instead of stuff. The product is no longer enough. And as compensation thickens, it takes more than price, convenience, or selection, or a quick contest or spiff. In the future of retail, it takes a fully integrated experience to keep and sustain that consumer's attention. So I tell you here, I think that the companies, and I'll show you some stats, the companies that align sales incentives to the customer journey, hire the right sales talent, and optimize the incentive comp process will have a competitive advantage over their competitors. We really call this the optimization and optimizing that end-to-end sales performance management. And so, some quick stats here. We talked about the millennials. They're a pretty large population, right? Considering that they're really communicating, enabling, and engaging our sales force around this paradigm shift and adapting to the new profile of this group and the salesperson and the customer. Think about that. 1/3 of the sales workforce is going to be millennials in 2017. This also means that an even larger percentage will be our B2B business and B2C consumers and buyer personas. The world of attracting, retaining, developing, enabling sales talent, knowing these profiles, is critical. And we thought we were just about there on kind of some of the sales support activities, and we were hitting it on all cylinders, right? So consider this. And have you ever considered matching your sales talent to your customers' needs? Forget the old way of looking at sales roles, but really redesign your sales team and compensation plans to match your customers' buying behaviors. When there's a mismatch, this causes friction, excuses, and disengaged employees, right? You have the unwanted and the desired turnover. The difference here, though, I think between good and great is really embracing your customers in a way that motivates and drives sales, that powerful combination. And I just share with you kind of this quick insight here of how Forrester Research had mapped this out and looking at this. You know your buyer. Your buyer fits into categories, right? You need to map that for your company, right? And know your buyer. Then you can match your sales approach. How do you go to market to what your buyer needs? Matching that combination is pretty Pretty powerful. So take, for example, real quick, and I think this in itself could warrant a much deeper dive, but take that tech buyer, right? The person who goes to the bike shop and wants to know everything there is about a bike, and they really are kind of that bottom right buyer. They're deciding, and they need to actually know the information, and they have a high need for knowledge, right? That's probably going to fit best with a specialist, right? So they're going to basically want to go to someone who really can speak technical, speak their terms. And then they're going to be the happiest because that met their need, and they're going to be more confident and comfortable in buying. So it's a real paradigm shift to build the comp plans and the sales profiles to meet that. So how do you connect that customer and sales journey? I mentioned earlier sales performance management, which we call SPM, right, or the incentive compensation around this. It's not easy to do without the right people, processes, and technology. And I talked about that struggle and that tug of war between sales, marketing, finance, and HR, right? We see this intersection of connecting the customer journey to the sales journey really that needs to map across multiple departments, right? So there's a lot of things that go into that. It's not just I need to sell X to this consumer Y, right? You need to think about this whole experience around the customer and the sales, and how do you bring your sales team on? How do you match their goals to where they need to be going after, right? How do you match their commission plans to what they're actually delivering and enable them to be successful? The companies that align these sales incentives to the customer journey and hire the right sales talent and optimize the incentive comp process have that competitive advantage. And so I told you earlier I'd share some insights on kind of like what's the money in this, right? The companies that are actually really digging into the incentive compensation and that end-to-end experience are delivering more. So at OpenSymmetry, we've been working with clients over 10 years dedicated just on this. And we've really seen those benefits referenced by the analysts and the results of our 1,500 solutions across 17 industries, right? So the proof in aligning your incentive compensation is there, right? Of those companies that you take that next layer and look at them that have an automated incentive compensation an automated incentive compensation solution, right? Where they're really optimizing this end-to-end experience. 2 times faster growth, quicker sales, shorter sales cycles. So take the 25% lower turnover. Right, look at that. That's real money, considering what Aaron shared with us earlier, that it costs an average of $3,000 and change to find, hire, and replace a $10 per hour hire, or that 67% turnover rate for those part-time hires. You add that up, that can really add up. That's significant cost associated with that. And if you can turn those into a return and reduce those costs, you're really talking about margins for your organization. So why wouldn't we want a solution? So I'm really excited to share some of these insights with you, but I'm more excited to at least give Fred a chance at IBM to talk to you on how companies are realizing value with such technologies like the IBM Incentive Comp solution, and really talk about some of those case studies so you can see how it's in action for retail. Over to you, Fred.
Well, thanks a lot, Laura, and hello everyone. It's really good to be with you today. And as Aaron said earlier, I'm Fred Sass, and I run marketing here at IBM for the Sales Performance Management Division. And hopefully, I can add a little different perspective to the dialogue. I'll talk about what we see from the perspective of a technology vendor in terms of things we see retailers doing with their incentive compensation systems and what some of the considerations are. So I'm going to start at a high level and really quickly work my way down. And at IBM we have a whole array of solutions for the retail industry. And you see this graphic here. Some of them are about the shopping experience, things like omni-channel commerce, like Aaron and Laura both mentioned. Some are about things like supply networks. But our incentive compensation solution really fits into that category near the top of the graphic, smarter operations. And we'll get into it, but it's all about being smarter with how you incent your frontline staff and how you efficiently manage that process. So I admit I spend all my time thinking about how we help customers with their sales performance and incentive comp. So I'll focus on that part of this IBM portfolio today. And Laura and Aaron have already talked about a bunch of issues in the retail industry, and I'm going to put it this way when it comes to compensation management. And the reality is that I know a lot of you folks here still rely on what I'll respectively call a patchwork of spreadsheets and email and manual processes and legacy systems to manage and administer your comp plans. And no one ever planned it that way, but over time it just happened. And you've got different divisions and maybe decentralized decision-making processes, and it's been pretty tough to wrap your arms around it, and your IT budgets are stretched. So unfortunately, it's not that uncommon for us to see massive retail companies that are really household names and doing a lot of things right, but really have some outdated technology in this area of incentive compensation. But you're not alone, so don't feel too bad. I wanted to share with you what one company expressed to us when they came to us to talk about a new comp system. And there was more than this, but this is what they said to us, that setting up sales contests were taking up to a week and required 2 resources. And they really wanted to do more of these contests because they thought it was important to their business, but it just wasn't practical. And in the middle there, they said that for monitoring and reporting, they had one person totally dedicated for 2 weeks each month, and that's not including the reporting work that their managers had to do regularly as well. And then to add to that, incentive results and metrics were only available at the end of the month. And that might have been okay in the 90s, but I know your businesses are pretty dynamic now, and there's a much better way to do this. And on that last point on the right there, we know that it's a much better practice from just a human behavior perspective to get the reward closer to the action. So you don't want these lags of months or more for people to see what they achieved. Laura, I know you've got some thoughts on this slide.
Well, yeah, and that's the beauty of this, is it's such a breadth of challenges out there, right? But then you think retail in itself as well. There's performance challenges across all, whether you're a department store or a specialty store, right? We've worked with clients, from the real high-end specialty store and the big boxes and the departments, and then the boutique stores, right? But then you also have the drug stores, the convenience stores, and in supermarkets, restaurants. So they're all really diving into some of these challenges. And if you look across the board, the ability, and take mergers and acquisitions of these companies joining forces, right, and those referrals and partner agreements that each of the organizations have. So everyone has a competitive focus on margin, right? They're really focused on customer acquisition. They have to manage all these disparate or complex data challenges and then rely on ways to kind of manage that and roll out and direct their sales teams to be effective, right? And it's a constantly moving paradigm. So I think that there's a big cross-section here, but then if you even take a laser focus more, I think, Fred, what you have is kind of really diving in and really honing in on what are those specific to incentive comp. Yeah,
kind of looking at it from the perspective of what we see as a technology vendor. We sell ICM systems to a lot of different industries outside of retail, but I thought I'd point out a few things that really jump out at me as things that we see in retail that might not be 100% unique, but are much more prevalent than we see in other industries. The first one's multiple crediting. I mean, you probably know what I mean by this, but I'll explain it anyway. Let's say we have a customer in the luxury goods business, for example, and when we look at their comp plans that get configured into the system, there could be an associate that gets paid for selling a bottle of perfume, and then there's the person that rings it up at the till, and there's the department manager in the beauty department, and the store manager, of course, maybe a regional manager. So, it's not uncommon for us to have 5 or 6 people getting paid in some way on the sale of a product, and obviously you need some software that knows how to handle that, and that's what we call multiple crediting. Region-specific rules. I mean, people talk about financial services being highly regulated. Well, I'd say retail is up there too, and it's probably not a surprise to you guys, but different laws in different states about how you handle compensation when an employee is terminated, or even who's allowed to get commissions in terms of hourly staff versus management. Anybody that operates in California on the webinar today would pretty much know what I'm talking about. So our software needs to be able to be configured to deal with these different regional differences in rules and legislation. Store transfers and role changes. It's one thing to have an employee's name in your system and have them attached to a comp plan, but we'll see, for example, let's say Joe is in a grocery store. He gets transferred from the produce section to the meat department, and they've got a different incentive plan or scorecard, whatever, over there in the meat department. So we need the notion of effective dating in our software to deal with these situations as people move around. And finally, I'll mention returns and store chargebacks. And I would say that's something that is fairly unique to retail as far as I can tell. And obviously a customer buys a jacket in one store in a chain and then returns it at another store, and we've got to be able to handle that so the comp for the store associate gets adjusted properly. If that's your policy, which is up to you, but it is for many of our retail clients. Okay, so we wanted to pause for a second and do one of these quick poll questions, put you on the spot. So as best you can, tell us what your company's biggest issue is with respect to variable incentive compensation. Is it it's too labor intensive to administer? Is it you have too many errors, which could be costing you money, or just annoying your staff? Or is it you're just not motivating and retaining employees as best you could? And that could be because you're not able to enact the incentives you like, or there's just some other annoyance factor that's with your compensation program. So I'll give you a few seconds to fill out your answer. And I know it's a bit subjective. Do your best. Probably best just to go with your gut feel. Just give it a few more seconds. Okay, let's take a look at what the group said. Okay, so 33%, it's too labor intensive to administer. Right down at 0%, too many errors. And but the top one here is interesting. We're not motivating and retaining our employees as best we could. So that's good. I might have guessed not quite so high a percentage on that third one, but that tells me where the mindset is out of the folks on the webinar today. That driving growth and having a good frontline experience is most important. So hopefully you folks find that interesting to see where your peers on the webinar today are thinking as well. Thank you for that.
And I would say, Fred, that echoes kind of the importance around that talent and really being able to engage the sales staff, right, and being able to really get them the tools that they need.
Definitely 100% agree. Yeah. And we haven't even talked about the software yet, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but I wanted to flash up a couple of screenshots in case you've never seen ICM software before. And the one on the left is one that an employee on the comp plan would see. You tailor it to your business, but it would typically show how you're doing against your targets and a breakdown of how you're being paid, and whatever other metrics are important to your staff. And the screenshot on the right is more for an administrator. That screen there is what someone would see as they're configuring how the compensation plan works and how it all hangs together in terms of, this one here is the workflow steps you'd want someone to go through if they, are lodging a dispute, or, you're trickling down new targets or something like that. So that's workflow. If anyone ever wants more detail about the software, let me know and we'll talk your ear off about that, but we're not going to get too much into it today. What we're going to talk about next is about a few of our customers in the retail industry, and kind of some use cases or facts that you might find useful. The first one is in the big and tall menswear space, and something I've learned from these guys is that big and tall men don't really like shopping, and I suppose they just have a hard time finding stuff, or maybe they're self-conscious and they want to get the heck out of there. And what our customer was trying to do here was changing the comp plan to influence the way their store associates worked with their customers, and then support it all with the right system around it. And what they realize is that having one of these large men in the store to buy something is a real opportunity to sell multiple items. So what we've got for them is the comp system we deployed for them looks at all the sales tickets and kind of gives a little kicker if they were able to sell let's say a shoulder garment like a blazer, but also bundle in some things like a belt and a tie and something else. So if they're able to do all that, then the associate gets an extra 2.5 commission. So it was all about. For them, it was all about spending time with the customer because they they might not be back for a while, and I'm sure your situation is different, right? But I think it's a great example of deciding on your sales strategy that you want, and then baking that into a comp plan, and then supporting it with the automation and reporting in a new system.
And I think the ability to be agile there, Fred, was one of those things I heard that was really important for enabling the customer, right? Because you may have different product and inventory that you want to adjust different when you look at what that strategic package or kicker you would want to apply, and you want to be able to do that real time and quickly get that out to the staff.
That's a huge common theme that we do see in retail more than any other industry. So that definitely comes up over and over again. Including here, this next example is a large paint retailer. I mean, I won't say their name, but it's one of those household names that you all know. And they bought our software to manage the incentives for 15,000 payees across their different business units. And if you can imagine, they had 3,000 territory realignments per month as people move from department to department or store to store, or that was even some of their outside sales jobs as well. And it was just an administrative nightmare before they bought the software. And in one system, they pulled together their processes for managing commissions and bonuses and MBOs, management by objectives. But you know what? It was actually this last bullet that was really a surprise benefit for them. And they found that once they had the software, they were able to do supplier-sponsored spiffs. And here's what my contact over there was telling me about. Fuller, the paintbrush company, would pay their store associates a bonus when they cross-sold certain brushes with a can of paint or whatever. And maybe that sounds pretty simple, but what my contact said was that they always want to do more of that, but they never really had the infrastructure to pull it off on a large scale across these many stores they had across the country. So with the new system, that was a big win that they could add that to their program.
And what I love about that, Fred, having my marketing hat on, is it's the magnitude of reach that you increase your marketing and sales budget by being able to enable that with the technology. So that's real reach and opportunity.
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't even in their main original objectives for launching the software, but it was a real side benefit once they had that infrastructure. Just a couple more examples, and this next one is a big office supply retailer, and big sales transaction volumes. You see here, 50 million transactions a month, so you can imagine they needed some technology to bring efficiencies and reduce errors. And the one thing that I'll call out here is that third bullet, and it's probably only of interest if you're one of the finance people on the webinar today. But one of their problem areas was forecasting compensation expense for accrual processes. And if you don't know what I'm referring to there, I mean, we have customers that they may pay out certain bonuses or whatever on a quarterly or an annual basis, but they probably got to accrue for it in their monthly income statement. So with the software, you're able to calculate what that exposure is based on your compensation logics you have and the sales you've made, even if you haven't actually paid it out yet. So that's improving that accrual forecasting. Like I said, maybe only important for the finance types in the audience today, but was a real issue for this large company, and they were able to solve that. The last example is one of our European clients, and it's for their electronics division. And they do all kinds of variable incentives for their sales associates, but it was really important to them, and this kind of gets back to what Laura was emphasizing a minute ago. They needed to quickly deploy new plans to get their associates focused on clearing out stock that they needed to get rid of. So if for them it was if a new model of a Sony TV was coming out, they wanted to quickly roll out a plan to encourage folks to clear out the old model, which we see a lot. So that was a big goal of theirs. Now, my last bullet on this one, I think I have to explain a little bit. It'd be nice if they didn't have to do this, but their back-end systems had a lot of problems in terms of errors for sales data. So So what they do when they'd receive their commission statements at the store level out of the ICM system, they'd actually compare that to the actual orders that have been written up in the store. And they use the dispute management feature in our ICM product to get it rectified. And it might sound a bit bizarre, and we don't actually build our product with the purpose of aiding companies in cleansing their data problems. But it's not that uncommon that we hear stories like that. And Laura, you and I have talked about this, that ICM systems often become valued as the most trusted data source in the company because it has people scrutinizing it and has this kind of self-correcting nature, like we're seeing here with this retailer. That's something that you've come across, I think, Laura, in the past.
Something to do with associating it with someone's pay brings a lot of attention and focus to it. So, no, we absolutely see this across not just this customer, but at other customers where ultimately the sales comp ownership becomes this great wealth of data that other departments want. So it's a paradigm shift at the organizations, but it's correct and scrubbed. Yeah,
it happens all the time. Okay, so our last poll question, I've mentioned special incentives a couple of times. Maybe you use these and maybe you don't. But we're interested in knowing if you do more of these, as well as supplier program rebates, if they were easier to execute. So pick one of these choices. Pick yes, that's true. I'd do more if they were easier, or maybe with some better software, or would you say no, we're okay now? And that could be that you just don't need these, or maybe you just like managing them through sticky notes on your bulletin boards in your lunchroom and that kind of stuff.
Well,
I shouldn't be so specious, Laura.
Well, you know how many people actually have those sticky notes still? But I will add, I thought one of the other interesting things is when you have access to this clean data, right, because I know everybody has lots of data, right? It's just being able to do something actionable with it. But the other thing I saw from the electronic goods division that I thought was interesting too is they were actually able to look at those programs and drive that inventory, right? Think about just shelf time and being able, lost inventory cost if you don't get that off the shelf. And so that's that optimization I was talking about. It's one thing to roll out a program. It's another thing to be able to optimize it across all cylinders. So I think that's just amazing that these companies are able to achieve such results with an automated solution.
Yeah, it's really a business case at a different level when you think of it that way. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got from our poll here. Boy, that's pretty. Yes, almost 2/3 said yes, that's true. They do more of these if it was easier to execute, which is what I would suspect. But okay, about a little more than a third of the group is okay right now. Either we're not sure if that's because this isn't part of their business model, or they just seem to manage this process as well as it is. So thank you for that. And I'm gonna wind down now, and I wanted to say that if you haven't adopted ICM yet and you just want to learn more, here's a video that'll take you about 4 minutes to watch, and you'll see a web link at the bottom of the slide, which I think we're going to make available as well, right, Laura? So
right. We'll be sending this out to everybody.
Yeah, let me hand it back to you here, Laura, for this next couple of slides.
Well, yeah, you made such a compelling, case, and I kind of was thinking that we had set up that poll question to be, obvious that they would want that, right? But we know now, right? We know from, what we've heard from people, but I actually firmly believe, I've been doing this for 20-some years, from when there was no automated solutions and we had to build them as our own apps, that there is a smarter approach, right, to take that noise away from your associates and your sales team and make them less crazy, right, and allow them to really engage and embrace and focus on the customer, right? So how do we get this done, right? And you hear these stories and you speak to folks and you say, well, I'm sitting here going, I'd like to actually do this. I'd like to get this. And I want to really up that game and actually be smarter on our holistic approach to engage the customer, hiring and developing the right talent and driving those behaviors, right? Really raising that bar of excellence so you have the laser focus on the customer experience. So I firmly believe you have to take action, right, to get this done. You can't just think that it's there. So we have some approaches that we've found work really well with our clients to get them from that, state of today, their current state, to achieving their vision of what they want. And at OpenSymmetry, we call it an assessment around the sales performance, and really that smarter Salesforce assessment so that you can get a roadmap to help you. We start with that initial idea, right, kind of where you are, but also where do you want to be so that we can actually put together that roadmap, right? Like let's build you a playbook, structure, a business case to help you be able to get this on your roadmap to deliver at your organization, right? We can also help you implement it. We've been doing this for a decade with IBM, and we can help maintain and deliver it. So at a bare minimum, we'd love to be able to help you be able to prove that. And where we like to start first is, as part of this smarter Salesforce model and really seeing what's your maturity. And we've been looking over the 1,500 projects we've done across the globe in various industries. What we've found is most clients, when they actually look at it across the spectrum, are between that 1.5 and 2.5 level of maturity, So they're still kind of in that operational, getting it done, making it work, right? But we really see that the companies and the statistics I shared with you are the ones that have streamlined and automated. They're up in that upper right quadrant, right, of basically having the best in class. And so, we find by starting there, that's the perfect kind of model or initiative to take and be able to actually deliver. So we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to help accelerate performance with IBM and at OpenSymmetry and really take our clients from that uncertainty and really turn that opportunity into real results. So I thank you for your time. I really appreciate your time, and I'll leave it to hand over for any Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Laura. So just as a reminder, listeners, we invite you to submit questions for Fred and Laura via the Q&A tool. Some have already come in, so please continue to submit your questions. And if we're unable to get to them in the time that's left here, we'll be sure to get you your response after the webinar ends. All right, so here's a question. At my company, we sometimes have 7 or 8 people being credited on a sale. Do you think that's wrong?
I'll take this. Yeah, this is Laura. Fred brought up earlier, too, that you've got the cross-sell, upsell, and different teams and stuff. So, no, I don't think that's wrong. I do think that what you have to do is have the right approach to and strategy to rolling it out. And that's really when your combination of quotas, territories, and sales programs get aligned, right? So very often you will have that. I'll use a grocery retailer as another example where they have teaming. So their whole focus is around that retail team to be able to deliver results for the team. And so in that case, you're not only looking at the individual results, but you're also looking at the team results. So you do see a lot of that duplicate crediting, which means you need to have your goals and targets set appropriately. So it's the reason why a technology solution is so important to be able to roll these out effectively so you're not burdened with multiple spreadsheets and tracking.
Yeah, Laura, we've seen it's our customers as high as 11 or 12, and good, good customers that have thought through that, and not to get too far off, but in other industries like high tech, we've seen upwards of 20. So as long as that's your go-to-market approach and everyone has some role in that, it's not unheard of. What else you got, Erin?
Okay, so here's another one for you. So owning the sales compensation program in the organization. Who should own it? Who should own the sales compensation program?
Laura, I think that's a good one for you as well.
Yeah, well, actually, I love this question because I usually ask people when I speak in other forums and stuff, and I ask people, like what organization are you sitting in? Are you in finance? Are you in IT? Are you in HR? Are you in sales, right? And I ask that because in my experience, I've actually sat in all 3 departments running this for different organizations, right? And now being on the consulting side, what I've seen has been amazing that the creation of sales engagement and sales effectiveness departments and sales operations departments are forming, right, with these companies. So where should it sit? It really depends on your organization and where it's driving. I do believe that it firmly needs to sit with the programs that are driving it and enabling it strategically for your organization. But what I have seen is that you may have it sitting in a finance organization because they're the ones paying it, but it's a combination. It's kind of a center of excellence is what we recommend, where you're actually getting the collaboration across the other departments. And very often, depending on your organization, you have some strict, especially the larger manufacturers and retailers, very, very strict data and IT compliance. So I find that you have to have a strong collaboration there.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really answer where it should sit. It really needs to be aligned with the strategy of the organization. But what's great about technology like IBM's ICM is the business user. You don't have to depend on IT to actually do it, right? So it makes the IT department happy, and then you've got the business users that are using it. And I'll have an example of a perfect center of excellence where I've seen it in a combination of hybrid, right? You have that central location of the sales ops people who really are driving and supporting, and it's a shared service of business administrators, right, that are enabling the field sales, and then they're pushing out and enabling the field sales to drive it. You're not requiring IT to actually do anything in this situation. So that I see as a very powerful combination. Or you just roll it directly out to the business.
Sure. Okay. Fred, I think this one is going to be for you. So this person is saying, we do scorecarding at our company. Does IBM handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny they mentioned that. Scorecarding is a term that we hear in retail probably more than any other industry that we serve. And we hear that in banking as well. But so yeah, we have retail customers that have these balanced scorecards in place often, which cover a bunch of metrics. But then you have the compensation management system that do all the calculations in terms of how people get paid based on that. And you could have that. You could also have a reporting and dashboarding within ICM itself to display that scorecard, or you can feed it through to other enterprise reporting tools you have. So yeah, scorecarding all the time. We see scorecarding. We do that with the retail customers.
Okay. What sort of skills do I need on my team to manage an ICM system?
I can take this. We implement a plethora of these, so I can take this, Fred. You probably already have those skills, right? Because you're already working probably on those sticky notes and workflows behind the scenes on your Excel spreadsheets, right? So as a business user to manage the ICM system, you definitely have those skills probably already in-house that you're working on. I would say that the unique variation here is getting it set up and lined up initially, right? You want a collaborative approach to build out the system for you so that you can enable the business users. So that I do see that sometimes the project team that implements slightly different than just the team that's managing it and maintaining it long term. Do you want to add any color to that, Fred?
No, that's true. We see more of an IT involvement in the early days when it comes to data integration and some of the initial security settings and stuff. But then, the goal definitely is to have more of the business users be the day-to-day users of it. I totally agree.
The biggest value. I mean, I really do. That the biggest value in having a technology solution like that is that you're not bootstrapped by some of the limitations that you might already have, right, with getting service from your IT department.
Good. Okay. Final question before we wrap up the webinar. This person's saying, don't payroll systems do what you do?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one. No, we do get that question sometimes, but the payroll systems don't really have the smarts, to manage the complex compensation schemes that we see in sales compensation, variable compensation. The way it works, what happens in the incentive compensation software, like we're talking about here today, it takes care of the calculations, the administrative duties and stuff, and then that gets fed over, kind of exported to your payroll systems like ADP and Ceridian. So it's a different level of complexity in terms of this type of compensation versus base pay that you might get in other payroll systems? Common question though, Erin.
Good, okay. All right, well, that's about all we have time for today. Hopefully today's event has given you the inside information you were looking for on incentive compensation and rate. Now before we go, thanks again to Fred Sass and Laura Roach for sharing their expertise today. Thanks, Fred and Laura, exceptionally valuable. And thanks so much to you for listening to today's webinar. Have a great rest of the day.